to another episode of the XCFL 5th Quarter Podcast. I'm your host, Big Daddy Dizzle. I just want to apologize for the late start for the podcast on a Sunday versus a Saturday. As some of you may have known, I was in Brooklyn last night. I got to see the Nets' last home game. They hosted the Bulls. I got to see Dwayne Wade for the first time, and maybe the last time. That was pretty cool, man. The Nets won that game in the last few seconds. It was pretty intense. Had a good night in Brooklyn. I got home safe, and now I'm here to do the podcast. It's episode 4 of the podcast. This week, we're going to cover the CFM weeks 10 through 13. This episode's topics are going to be weekly game recaps, players of the week, weeks 10 through 13, team standings. I'm going to talk about the MVP awards and also some of the other awards around the league for the XCFL as well, and a little bit more talk about the XCFL magazine. So let's go ahead and get right to it, guys. Next up, we're going to go ahead and talk about the XCFL topics that took place in the last week. All right, so last week's topics, we had a few different things go on. We had the primetime owner information, which was for the Carolina Panthers. We also had the Bears pick their scheme and playbooks, who just joined the league, as well as the Panthers go ahead and get their schemes and playbooks dedicated to their coaching style. In team news, we had a lot of that, of course. Every week we get a bunch of Chiefs Insider we had this week. No water in the Dolphins tank. Check that out. Bears Week 11 infographic. That was a pretty cool thing to check out if you missed that. The Patriots, are they the best defense in the league? Raiders did a round table Week 8 versus the Pittsburgh Steelers, and also Week 9 versus the San Diego Chargers. There was another Golden Gate Gazette. Check that out for Week 11 update. Left outside linebacker A.J. Klein helps Miami beat the Ravens 19-17. That was another big win for the Dolphins this year. AFC West update took place. Check that out. Raiders Roundtable did a Week 10 versus the Minnesota Vikings. There was an Arrowhead update for the Chiefs. The Browns, they're in trouble. Can they dig themselves out? Check that article out. There was actually 2 more Arrowhead updates. Check those out. Dolphins, no match for the Patriots as they're still undefeated. And, of course, we talked about the new head coach in Carolina. We had the Jets versus the Giants, the battle for MetLife Stadium, and also a little highlight video that Nick did for us. That was great. If you didn't check that out, go ahead and check the GroupMe forums and go ahead and take a look at the video that he did. That was pretty good. I liked it. I think that's something that we're going to look into in the future and something that we're going to talk about. Next up, we're going to go ahead and get into the weekly game recaps. So we're going to go ahead and start with Week 10. All right, Week 10, you had Denver at Tennessee. Denver picks up the win in this one, 21-19. Denver is on a 4-game winning streak. They went from 1-4 to 5-4, and at this point, Boone had fallen to 4-5. You had the Colts at Miami. Sean White picks up the win, 27-18. The Colts snap their losing streak, and Miami is on a 3-game losing streak at this point in Week 10. Oakland played Minnesota. Oakland wins that one 19-14. That was a big win for Doss as it moved him to 7-2 at that time, and that snapped the winning streak for Minnesota at 6-3. Houston played Kansas City. Houston won 27-3. Pittsburgh played the Jets. That was a close one. That was 13-6. That, of course, was dubbed by our commissioner as the father-son weekend, and as you could see, the father and son combo of the McMillan family swept the Ferrara family. Kudos to you guys. By the way, Week 10 also featured one shutout. Week 11, we had Detroit at Dallas. This was a big one. Detroit won 17-6. You had the Jets with their win over Cleveland, bouncing back 17-15. They picked that one up. Cleveland, I believe, missed the game-winning field goal in that one, unfortunately. But kudos to you, Infamous, as you just had a daughter. Congratulations, sir. Next up, you had New Orleans at Tampa Bay. That's a rivalry there. 15-8. New Orleans won that one. Miami picked up their win, as we mentioned earlier in the feature, 19-7 over Baltimore. Keynote in Week 11, you had 3 shutouts in that week. All right, Week 12. This was a big week. This was Division Rival Week. You had division games: Carolina at Tampa Bay, Houston at Tennessee, Cincinnati at Baltimore, San Francisco at the Rams, San Diego at Denver, Miami at New England, Chicago at Detroit, Philadelphia at Dallas. Now, before I get started with this week, I was waiting on the Cincinnati at Baltimore and the San Diego at Denver game to finish up this feature. Unfortunately, what went down is the games were played or not played. I still don't know what happened. I personally don't give a shit, so I'm not even going to talk about those. So, needless to say, in this case, the division games: Tampa Bay, Tennessee, the Rams, New England, Detroit, and Dallas all were at the home teams, in which all won those games. Tampa Bay won their game against Carolina 8-7. Tennessee against Houston 21-14. The Rams against San Francisco 28-14. New England over Miami 27-0. Detroit over Chicago 23-21. That was a close one. And Dallas over Philadelphia 26-9. Excuse me. Non-division games: you had Minnesota over Washington 26-13. Kansas City picked up their win over Indianapolis Colts 10-7. Seattle won 20-14 over Pittsburgh. The Jets beat the Giants 36-23. Cleveland picked up a win 23-20 over Buffalo. New Orleans won 38-12 over Arizona, and Oakland won 21-16 over Jacksonville. We had one shutout during that week, which was the New England over Miami 27-0. In week 13, had a couple keynotes here. You had a commissioner's battle: the Bills versus the Steelers, co-commissioner versus commissioner. Andrew and the Bills won that one 24-0. An old rivalry between the Bears and Minnesota, which is now Kansas City. Myself against Nick and the Minnesota Vikings. He won that one 23-14. And a new rivalry: Tennessee at Oakland. Coach Das versus Coach Boone. Coach Das was successful in that one 31-14. And the Lions and the Rams. Lions win that one 12-7. Keynote in this one was the shutout, which was the Bills over the Steelers. Next up, we're going to go ahead and talk about the team standings in the XCFL currently at this moment. XCFL team standings, we're going to go ahead and break it down with the AFC and then the NFC. AFC, we're going to start with the AFC North. This division is a mess, in my opinion. You have a team that's leading the way at 6-6, the Browns, who are ranked 15th right now in the XCFL. They're 6-6. They're 500, of course. They have 227 points for, 208 points against. They're on a 2-game streak. The Steelers, they're ranked 16th. They're 5-7. They're currently on a 3-game losing streak. The Bengals are 3-9. They are on a 1-game losing streak currently at this point. And then the Ravens are 2-9. They're on a 3-game losing streak. Next, you have the AFC South. AFC South leading the way is the Texans. They are 8-3. They have a current losing streak of 1 game at the moment. Next behind them is the Titans. They are at 500 at 6-6. They're on a 1-game losing streak. The Jaguars are 3-8. They are on a 3-game losing streak, and the Colts are 2-10 on a 3-game losing streak. The entire division is on a losing streak. AFC East, you have the Patriots, of course. They are 12-0, undefeated. They are on obviously a 12-game winning streak and at 1,000% winning percentage. Need I say more? The Bills behind them at 10-2. They are on a 1-game winning streak. The Jets are 4-8 this season, and they're on current a 1-game losing streak, soon to be 2-game losing streak as soon as I kick his ass. Dolphins are 2-10. They are on a 2-game losing streak. AFC West, you have leading the way are the Raiders at 9-3. Coach Das is on a 2-game winning streak. Behind him is the Chargers, who are 8-4. They are on a 4-game winning streak. The Broncos are 5-6. They're on a 2-game losing streak. And myself, the Chiefs, are 3-9 on a current 1-game losing streak. Next, we're going to take it to the NFC North. Leading the way are the Lions at 11-1, currently on a 6-game winning streak. Behind them are the Vikings at 9-3 on a 3-game win streak. The Packers are 6-6 at 500. They are on a 4-game winning streak. And the Bears are 2-10 on a current 6-game losing streak. That division is on a pretty big streak there. Lions, Vikings, and Packers all doing well in the NFC North. NFC South, you have the Saints at 11-1 on a 6-game winning streak. The Buccaneers are 7-5 on a current 1-game losing streak. The Panthers are 4-8 on a 1-game win streak, and the Falcons are 3-9, also on a 1-game winning streak. NFC East leading the way, the Cowboys are 8-3. They're on a 1-game winning streak. The Redskins are behind them at 4-8. They're on a 5-game losing streak. The Eagles are 4-8. They're on a currently 1-game winning streak. And then you have the Giants, who are 2-9. Started off the season 2-0, currently on a 9-game losing streak. Let's turn that around, Chadwick. Next, last but not least, the NFC West. You have the Rams, who are 10-2, leading the way. They are currently on a 1-game losing streak. The Seahawks behind them, just by a game at 9-3. They are on a 1-game losing streak. The 49ers are even at 500 at 6-6. They are on a 2-game losing streak. And the Cardinals are 5-7. They are currently on a 1-game winning streak. All right, that takes care of the standings in the XCFL. Next, we're going to talk about the players of the week, which are covered weeks 10 through, it's going to be 10 through 12 currently in the week 13 that we have. Let's go ahead and take a look. Week 10, you have the NFC Offensive Player of the Week, Ezekiel Elliott, halfback for the Cowboys. He had 25 carries, 156 rushing yards. He averaged 6.2. He had 2 rushing touchdowns on the ground. NFC Defense, you had Marcardius, the left outside linebacker, who had 6 tackles, 3 sacks. AFC Offense, you had Lewis from the Colts, halfback. He had 13 carries and 136 rushing yards. He averaged 10.5 on the ground. He had 2 rushing touchdowns and 2 receptions for 17 yards. He averaged 8.5. And he also had 1 reception touchdown. AFC Defense, you had Perry, middle linebacker for the Chargers, who had 2 tackles, 3 interceptions, 1 of them for a touchdown. Week 11, Player of the Week, you have NFC Offense, Gates, the halfback from the Minnesota Vikings, who had 24 carries, 82 rushes. He was 3.4 rushing yard averages with 2 rushing touchdowns, in which he had 3 receptions for 109 yards in the air. He averaged 36.3 yards in the air with 1 touchdown as well. He was more of a wide receiver that game than he was a running back. Great job there by Gates. NFC Defense, you had Kennard with the strong safety with the Rams, who had 6 tackles, 2 interceptions, 2 touchdowns in that game. That's pretty impressive for a defensive strong safety. AFC Offense, you had Johnny Manziel, Mr. Football, quarterback, 9 of 28, 342 passing yards, 5 passing touchdowns. He had 3 carries for 3 rushing yards. Negative 3 rushing yards. AFC Defense in this week, you had Fowler Jr., left end of the Pittsburgh Steelers, who had 2 tackles, 2 sacks, 1 interceptions, and 2 forced fumbles. Player of the Week, Week 12, you have the NFC Offense, Gates, again, halfback, 17 carries, 224 yards. He had 13.2 rushing yard average with 2 rushing touchdowns. He had 2 receptions for 17 yards. He averaged 8.5 in the air. NFC Defense, you had Straczynski with the Vikings, who had 9 tackles. 9 of those tackles, 5 of them were sacks. AFC Offense, Todd Gurley II. He is no stranger to the Player of the Week. Here he is again, halfback for the Jets, 22 carries, 236 yards rushing, an average of 10.7 rushing yards, which he had 2 rushing touchdowns. However, he did have 2 fumbles, 3 receptions for 84 yards. He averaged 28 reception yards, and he did have 1 reception touchdown. I guess that kind of makes up for 2 fumbles. AFC Defense, brothers, the Tennessee Titans. Boone will be happy and impressed that his defense has a Player of the Week up here, the middle linebacker, who has 3 tackles and had 3 interceptions as well. That takes care of the players of the week. Next, we're going to go ahead and get into the MVP talks and the awards. All right, we're going to get right into the MVP talks. Let's just start with Deion Gates, the Vikings. He's leading the way right now on the number one of the list. You have Darrell Jackson, who's number 2, Jimmy Garoppolo at number 3, Marquez Griggs at number 4, Jared Kuehl at number 5. Rounding out the top 10, you have Emery Ali, from the Patriots, Whitey Mercilus, Andonius Logan, Keith Marshall from the Rams, and Johnny Manziel at number 10 with the Texans, finishing out the MVPs. I talked a little bit on this earlier in the year. I still think, and I still stand by, my man Marcellus down with Houston. I think this guy is the real deal. He has sack records to prove it. I still think he'll finish at the top of this list before it's all said and done. I mean, we're currently in week 13 right now, so we still have a few weeks left. He was injured. I believe he's due back either next week or the week after. It might have even been this week or next week, so we'll look into that. Jimmy Garoppolo having a great season with the Saints. No short of greatness is Darrell Jackson, who's having an MVP season, obviously, with the Buffalo Bills. They're having a great season. Marquez Griggs is making a name for himself out in Seattle. He's also doing big things from the backfield there for those Seahawks. Kuehl, who's on the undefeated Patriots, he's week in, week out. He's a workhorse. He's sitting at the top 5. So let's go ahead and take a look at the coaches. Top 10 coaches right now, you have Yost at the number 1 spot at 12-0. Coach Locke with the Saints at 11-1. You also have Coach Doback with the Lions, who's 11-1. And then Jack Tyler with the Rams, who's doing a phenomenal job with that team, who's just completely turned them around. We talked about this earlier in the season in the special report. They're currently 10-2. And then you have Tim Tebow with the Buffalo Bills, who's 10-2, and that tops out the top 5. Rounding out the top 10, Rodney Justice on the list at number 6 with the Vikings, who's 9-3. Bobby Hill with the Seahawks, who's 9-3 as well. Coach Doss with the Raiders, who's 9-3. Coach Josh Hanna with the Chargers, who's 8-4. And at number 10, DeBo Sweeney, the Super Bowl champs, Texans at 9-3. Next, we're going to get into the talks for the AFC. We're going to talk a little bit about the offense and defensive players of the year awards currently standing. Right now, offensive player of the year, I think you have Darrell Jackson at the list on the AFC. You have Todd Gurley, Jared Kuehl, Fuller, Manziel, Wentz, Mitchell, Latavius Murray, Niall Davis, and Gary Purcell. They round out the top 10 for the AFC. For the NFC, you have Deion Gates, Jimmy Garoppolo, Marquez Griggs, Marshall with the Rams, Logan with Detroit Lions, Ezekiel Elliott with Dallas, Brandon Cooks with the Saints, David Johnson also with the Saints, Blake Bortles with the Lions, and Romberg, the rookie for the Buccaneers, rounding out the top 10 for the NFC. With the defensive players of the year, AFC, you have top 10, you have Marcellus, you have Ali, you have Bruce Smith Jr., Leonard Floyd, back-to-back Bills. You have DeMarco Rainey there. Khalil Mack with the Raiders. Jones with the Patriots. That's Jonathan Jones. Tank Copeland, also with the Patriots, who was a big-time draft pick a few years ago. LaRon Benoit with the Buffalo Bills. And rounding out the top 10, Aldon Smith. Next, we'll talk about the NFC Defensive Players of the Year. You have Dwight Cotton with the Cowboys, Blandon with the Rams, Ogletree with the Rams, back-to-back Rams there, Rankins with the Saints, Donald, another Ram here on the list, McGahee with the Lions, Lee Steer, if I'm saying that right, with the Seahawks, Charles Tapper with the Saints, Breland with the Lions, and Levante David, another Lion, rounding out the top 10 defensive players of the year for the NFC. Next, we'll talk about the rookies in the AFC. Rookie
Offensive Player of the Year, Gary Purcell, hands down, has been handling his business with the Broncos. Next, you have Joe Swanson. You have Kegler, Ruffin, Davis, Sharper, Bronson, Chris Johnson Jr. with the Buffalo Bills, Marion with the Chargers, and Gabe Chavez with the Raiders. NFC Rookies of the Year on the offensive side of the ball, you have Gates, hands down, who's having an MVP type year. You have Kurtzky with Philadelphia, Straczynski with the Seahawks, Hilton with the Cardinals, Kelly with the Saints, Lumenberg with the San Francisco 49ers, Mabry with the Eagles, Burrows with the Dallas Cowboys, Ocho Trace with the Seahawks, that's a great name, and Joel Vilma. I wonder if he's related to the Vilma from the Saints. Joel Vilma with the Panthers, rounding out the top 10 offensive rookies of the year for the NFC. We'll take it back to the defense for the AFC offensive rookies. You have Ali topping the list, Bruce Smith Jr., Torbor with the Jets, Barrow with the Jaguars, Magnum with the Bengals, Thurmond with the Browns, Buchanan with the Raiders, Jimmy Macklin with the Chargers, Madison Lechler with the Bengals, and Roberts with the Jets, defensive rookies of the year for the AFC. For the NFC, you have Nate Straczynski with the Vikings, Jatavius Griffin with the Seahawks, Kennard with the Rams, Cloud with the Vikings, Rayshawn Gamble with the Washington Redskins, Lamar Powell with the San Francisco 49ers, Spurlock with the Rams, Eddie Burks with the Falcons, Jarrett Ballantyne at number 9 with the Cardinals, and finishing this up with Raymond Gadsden, number 10 on the list for the NFC Defensive Rookies of the Year. Let's talk a little bit about the magazine for the XCFL that's coming up soon in the next issue. Some big things to talk about there. There's going to be a Power Top 5. Check that out. That's going to be a great article. We talk a little bit about draft stories, since the draft is coming up in just about 10 weeks or so. You have some draft stories to check out. If you've missed them through the weeks, you'll get a chance to recap them in the magazine. Of course, you have the Commissioner's Corner and the topics that he'll bring up, as always, with the XCFL. Some great things coming there. You have a big article on some of the rookies that I just mentioned here in the Rookies of the Year, defensively and offensively. These guys were drafted last year. We're going to talk a little bit about how they perform, or how they've performed so far this season here in the XCFL. And, that's going to wrap it up this week, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. Of course, at Big Daddy Dizzle. That's all we got for you this time, folks. Take care.